Everyone, welcome to Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. My name is Andrew Marotta, host of the show, and I hope you were digging that music. I'm excited here in 2018. We've been working a couple of months to find the right sound, working with Pete Connors of Shabby Studios in Shahola, Pennsylvania, to get that ready and tweaking and changing, and we finally got it. So I hope you dig that sound, and that's going to be the theme of the show. And we put a lot of time and thought into what we wanted it to sound like, and we wanted energy, we wanted enthusiasm. And again, that was Pete Connors of Shabby Studios. You want to contact Pete, you need a music mix, you need something drawn up for your work, you can contact him on Facebook at shabbystudios.com. But I appreciate his work there. I told him I wanted it to be a combination of the Eye of the Tiger and the Chicago Bulls intro theme music. I wanted energy, I wanted excitement and enthusiasm to get the show started and get the blood flowing and get the blood pumping. So I hope you like it. It is show number 32. And I am very proud, very excited to talk to Dr. Ken Eastwood, who is going to be our guest coming up in the next segment. Dr. Eastwood, for all of those listening in Middletown and the Orange County area, has been the long-standing superintendent of Middletown schools and did just an absolutely incredible job of turning around Middletown schools and changing the culture there. So super excited to talk to Dr. Eastwood about his work and about what he's looking forward to in his retirement. He's on the doorstep of his retirement, and we're super excited to have him on the program. Also very excited to have back in studio. He was more than halfway across the country. There was no speeding tickets, and he's back in one piece. Gavin Burt, back from a long trip. Gavin, welcome back.
Thank you. It's good to be back.
Well, first of all, how far west did you go?
I drove as far west as a town called Baggs, Wyoming, which is sort of between Laramie and Rock Springs.
Okay. And let's have a couple rapid-fire questions, Gavin. What was the best thing you saw on the trip?
I would say probably... See, that's a very tough question.
You saw so many things, yeah.
I did. Probably the Rocky Mountains.
Oof. A lot of snow, right?
Not as much as you'd think. There were parts of the Midwest, maybe even Mountain West, that had less snow than Utica, New York did a week earlier.
Wow.
Yep.
All right, best meal?
Best meal, the shrimp scampi at Olive Garden.
Olive Garden. You went to a standard chain restaurant, huh?
I did for many of the places I went. I mean, I went to some other local places, but, you know, when you go around America, a lot of the places you find are chains, and that's okay on vacation. If I ate that way all the time, I'd be in a lot of health problems or trouble.
Well, I'm glad you got back okay, and I'm looking forward to hearing more about the trip, and welcome back.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. So let's get started here on Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. And again, my name is Andrew Marotta, host of the show, and it's show number 32. So if you're up here in the Northeast, if you're in Orange County, New York, Stroudsburg area, wherever you are listening, you know that last week was just frigid up around these parts. I mean, I consider myself a pretty tough guy. I'm not a pansy. I got some rough hands here. We'll get dirty, but man, it was really cold. It was tough. And as I was planning and getting ready for the show with Dr. Eastwood, I had a couple different concepts picked out, and I was in my house, and all of these things just were happening because of the cold. I had something else planned, and I decided to change it with what was going on. That wind, the snow, and then the temperatures just created, I'm sure, like for many of you, just a terrible situation. And really, you had to do a lot just to stay warm. We burn wood in my home and pellets, and the stacking of the wood and the getting of all of that stuff. And, we burned so much wood over that time, we had to restack and get more in the snow. And we had Team Murata out there. I'll give a shout out to my kids, Claire, Matthew, and Tessa. They were out there working their butts off, getting it all. And then the hot water heater went. And I said, oh, my God, what happened now? And then the gas stove in the basement went. So there was no heat in the basement. It was freezing. And as like many of you, I'm sure happened, I don't have pipes. I have those tubes in my house. The tubes started to freeze. So then I wasn't getting any water. And, oh, my God. So as I woke at 4 a.m., I said, what the heck? And it was my gas. The propane gas had run out, which caused the hot water heater to stop, which caused the gas stove to stop. And we were able to take care of that. Then my wife got sick. It was like one thing after another. And I had these 3 kids in front of me. Boy, was I losing my patience and getting short. But I kind of paused. I said, you know what? We got to get through this. And I had a little team meeting. We went over what we were going to do. We went over the problems. And again, my wife was sick, so with the co-director of Team Murata down, I had to get a hold on this. And that's when it hit me. I said, you know what? I'm going to change my concept for today. I'm going to talk about some real-life stuff. So we have Dr. Eastwood coming on, and as superintendent of a large school district in a big city, he has to handle a lot of crises, a lot of problems that pop up. This was a minor problem, not a major problem. But as principal of a high school like I am, there are things that happen. And when you're the leader, you have to handle these things. You have to get an action plan in place. So I jotted down just a couple of thoughts of things you could do in times of crises. And some of these are from other places, and some of them are from experience. But get your pen. I know we got our fans listening. Christine's listening. Evel's listening. Pat Grimes is listening. So get your pen and jot them down. So in times of crises, number one, stay calm. You're the leader. You're in charge. This was a time with my family. It was, we had some days off of school. We had the weekend. I wanted to enjoy the time. I don't want to be yelling at the kids and hooting and hollering. So number one, stay calm. Number two, stay positive. It's not does nobody any good to talk negatively and woe is me. Number three, analyze the situation and prioritize. What is happening? What needs to be done first? And how can we fix it? I knew the first thing I had to do was get that gas stove back on. So I worked on it, and that's when it hit me that, you know what, there's no more gas in there. I get the gas company there, boom, they came and filled it up. We did get that back on, and that certainly helped with the tubes and the freezing water. So number three, analyze the situation and prioritize. Number four, this is from the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. Begin with the end in mind. So what was the end in mind? We had to get that house back in order. I had to get the heat back. We had to get the hot water heater fixed. And we had to set those things up to make those happen. So, again, the Stephen Covey and the 7 Habits. Begin with the end in mind. Number 5, make an action plan. You prioritized, you analyzed, make an action plan. Put things into action. I spent a couple of hours with that gas stove to get it up and running. That was first on the list. Calling a local plumber to get the hot water heater installed, et cetera, to make all those things happen, you have to take action. Number 6, connect with the kitchen cabinet. I touched base with my father-in-law, Eugene Grimes. He was on the program, certainly helped analyze the situation. I talked to another plumber as well as a local handyman as well about the things that were happening and got some perspective. So it's always great to bounce things off people that you trust. And as Mr. John Exantis would say, it's the kitchen cabinet, and that's also a concept in my book that we'll talk about a little bit later. And lastly is number 7, communicate, communicate, communicate. I certainly talked with co-director T. Murata, my wife, about what was happening. She wanted to know when that hot water was coming back on, and how to communicate with the local plumbers and people coming to do the work, etc., to get things squared away. I had to communicate with my kids what I needed from them, etc., etc. So this was a minor situation, but even in major situations, these concepts certainly could come into play. And I'm going to ask Dr. Eastwood about things that he does when there was times of crises in Middletown. But whether it's a snowstorm in a school district, whether there's a fight in the cafeteria, whether you have a drug bust at school, inappropriate actions by the adults, all of these things can happen in schools. And whether you're the building principal, such as myself, or the superintendent of schools, like Dr. Eastwood, you have to handle these situations and do it in an appropriate manner. So that's our opening concept. Hope you jotted them down. We'll go back over them at the end of the program as a recap. And we're going to get to our guest coming up here in the next segment. It's show number 32 here on Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. We'll be right back with Dr. Eastwood, Superintendent of Middletown Schools. Welcome back to the program, everyone. This is Andrew Murata here on Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. You can reach out to us on the show, Andrew at neversinkmediagroup.com, or on Twitter at AndrewMurata21. I am super excited to welcome in Dr. Ken Eastwood, Superintendent of Schools in Middletown, New York. Good morning, Doc, and thanks for coming on the program.
Good morning to yourself.
Dr. Eastwood, it's a pleasure and an honor to have you on the program. You've put a lot of time here at Middletown Schools as a superintendent, and you're on the doorstep, knocking on the door of your retirement. How does it feel a couple weeks out?
Good. I think I'm at the right place in the right time, and the school district is in great shape, so it's the appropriate time to move on.
Doc, you've done 13 years at Middletown, coming down from Oswego, New York, when you were superintendent there. Let's talk about some of the great accomplishments that you and the school district have done over that time.
Yeah, we've been very fortunate in Middletown. We've had a great community that has supported the schools significantly over the last 13 and a half years I've been here. And the staff, both administrative, teaching, and other staff, have been absolutely phenomenal. They bought into the concept of high expectations, and they produced under that belief. And we've been able to close the gaps between ethnicities and students of poverty versus those that are not. So the long and short of it is all students, regardless of what their ethnic background is or their economics, their family economics are, all of the kids are learning at really high level paces. So that's wonderful. A high needs district like ours, high minority district like ours, I've yet to see a school district that's erased all of the gaps between the ethnicities and economic family issues. And last year we were able to do that with a graduation group that reached 89%. When I came here in 2004, the graduation rate was 51.
Wow.
So we've made a lot of progress and made sure that all of our kids are learning at the same levels, which I think is probably the biggest accomplishment that I've made in my educational life. And also, I think, from the research, significant accomplishment on the research to prove that all students can learn well. So.
Doc, I work in Port Jervis, New York, as the high school principal, but certainly preparing for this interview, I spoke to some Middletown teachers, asking some questions that they thought, I should ask and things like that. And a lot of them used the terminology saying that you and the team there have removed the feel and the look of poverty. And you just touched on that. So specifically, what were some of the things you did in the schools to help counteract some of the poverty and some of the challenges that the kids might have in their homes, whereas when they come to school, there's a different feel and a different look. Tell me about some of the things specifically that you were able to do in the schools. I know most recently you introduced a state-of-the-art computer lab that has tremendous hours and feeds the kids and things like that. Why don't you touch on some of those things, Doc?
Yeah, I think it's important for the listeners to understand what the concept of erasing the look and feel of poverty is. We did an enormous amount of research 13 years ago and did it for over a 2.5-year period, studying what exactly is the concerns of the district and the issues associated with students not graduating on time and not performing well. And when it was all said and done, we had an enormous amount of data. But part of the data actually showed us that in reality, all students, every one of our kids really wanted to learn well. And when you think about it, when you have a conversation with kids, very seldom do they have a thought in their head, oh, well, I really don't want that. But most kids do want it, and it's a deep belief of theirs that they have the ability to do it. And oftentimes it's the system and the way the system operates that keeps them away from that. So, for instance, students of poverty often they're cultured into believing sometimes that they can't have access to the same things as other students. And they're oftentimes cultured about staying away from anything that costs money because their family doesn't have money. So if they want to go on an overnight trip or a trip and there's a charge to the students for that trip, let's say to go to Washington, D.C. over the course of a weekend or something, they can't participate in that because they've been told, look, we don't have the funds for it, so don't even get close to asking for it. Just say that you can't do it or you're not available. The same goes for sports. The same goes for simply like playing instruments because most instruments have to be leased. And students don't have the money for those types of things. The access to taking college courses in high school, they don't have access to those. So when you're in a system for 13 years and you're constantly being told, don't ask about participating because we don't have the money, you get to believe that you don't have the ability to have access to the programming, the educational programming that everybody else does, and that by itself is depressing. So we wanted to pull that away. We wanted to remove that barrier from the kids and give them full access to virtually everything. We actually did an experiment 10 years ago around this when we discovered this was a major issue. And we sat around the table and we had a conversation about, how can we provide more activities for our kids that they would want to participate in? And after about 45 minutes of struggling, I put on the table, you have a music program, but you don't have a strings program here, so why don't we do that? And two of the administrators at the time said, well, that's not our kids. And I said, what do you mean by that? And when they talked about it, what they were basically meaning is these kids don't engage in extracurricular activities, especially those like music or other types of arts, etc. And I said, well, what a better experiment then? Because if we really believe that all students want to participate, and have access to these, then let's erase the issue. And what is the issue? The issue is renting instruments, renting the strings instruments. And I said, so let's do an experiment. We're going to buy the instruments for any student that wants to participate. Now, it's not buying and giving to them for keeps. It's buying and loaning it to them over the course of the year and the summer if they do a summer program. In the first year, we started at grades 3 and 4, and in year 1 with this experiment, we had over 225 kids sign up in third grades 3 and 4 for strings.
Wow.
Now, that's grown over the years, and last year we checked, we'd had over 775 students over the course of last year and have taken stringed instruments over that period of time. But what that proved to us was kids do and can, by the way, perform extremely proficiently in a strings program if given the appropriate access. So we also provide the instruments now for kids in band as well. And the third experiment that we did, which really topped us off, was when we had the Race to the Top grant. We provided free access to college courses for kids, meaning that regardless of your home economic situation, you can still sign up for these courses because they're going to be free.
And earn college credits.
And earn college credits, absolutely.
Absolutely, yeah.
And after the third year, which was last year, 36% of the graduating class had taken college courses during their high school experience. Half of those kids, 56% of those kids, were on free and reduced lunch. 84% were minority. This year's current class is in the low 40s. So more and more kids are taking college courses while they're in high school now at our schools. But all of these things basically prove the point that all students really do have a desire to engage in what's going on in school, participate, but we have to make sure that we look at things associated with what's holding them out or keeping them out of the system. And typically that relates to some kind of monetary reason. One of the things we also did this year was make sure that all students, 100% of our kids, have access to breakfast and lunch program. And some people have said, well, why do you do that? One of the more subtle forms of discrimination in schools is, interestingly enough, the meal program. And if you think about it, when kids are in line and they don't have their number or their card, and they hold up the line because they can't remember their number or they're fetching for it, kids behind them have a tendency to become anxious about it and make subtle comments associated. But the other thing they know is those students are free and reduced lunch.
Sure.
And they treat them differently. And that's kind of a subtle discrimination that doesn't need to be there. And one of the major reasons why we went forward with the 100% free and reduced lunch and breakfast program. And interestingly enough, since we've done that, the meals served have skyrocketed significantly. So, and we're actually doing that because our food program is self-funded in the sense that it's its own business. It's not really taking public dollars away. So these are the things that I'm talking about, greasing the look and feel of poverty. We want all of our students to feel equal in the process. We want them to have equal access to virtually all of our programs and identify what their real goals are and go after them and feel comfortable doing that. And I think we've been highly successful at that.
And just listening to you talk, Doc, setting that up for a level playing field, you didn't talk about anything about academic ability. It was all creating the environment that the kids would have a fair opportunity, using the word discrimination here in 2018 when you're talking about opportunity is amazing. and you've been able to counteract that. So kudos to you and the district.
Yeah.
Doc, one of the things you hear publicly, in the paper and on the news, things that the ability for you and your team and the district to go after grants to help fund these things. Has that been a major player in the way you've funded these projects?
It's been part of it, yes. One of the things that we do, I see my job maybe differently than a lot of my colleagues do. I see my job as identifying what's going to take place or what needs to take place, what the environments will look like, the learning environments will need to look like 5 and 8 years out. So I'm not in my job thinking about today. I have staff that take care of the today routine. My job is to continually think about what's coming down the road and how do we prepare for it, talking about identifying those types of things, and then making sure that we have in place the financial resources and other resources to make sure that we meet the needs of students down the road. So, for instance, people have said to me, well, you're ready to leave. What would you have been looking at down the road 5 and 8 years from now? And I said, well, that's easy because we've been thinking about it now for a year. And the ironic thing about that is voice-activated classrooms at the elementary level. And people say, well, what's that mean? And I said, well, look in the typical home environment now. If you look in the typical home environment, there's some type of voice-activated device. And people now are talking versus typing into a laptop or other devices. They're now talking to devices that take their thoughts or, for a better term, their questions and demands, and somebody translates that and puts it into computer activity with an answer instantaneously. Kids today are learning in those kinds of environments, and when in about 5 to 8 years, most of these kids will be going into away from homes that are technologically advanced in voice activation and expect schools to be in the same way.
Mm-hmm.
So where you're working on a problem, you don't have to type the questions in on a portable device, which is mostly used now. It would be asking the question, for a better term, out loud, and then devices that listen can depict the student's voice and who is talking, and will, in essence, be able to take that question or thought and provide appropriate resources for answering that question or pursuing a solution on something personally to their device. So that's the kind of place that my head is at. And even after I retire, I am also talking with some colleagues about thinking about how to take a look at those environments down the road so they don't become destructive to the learning process. They become ways of increasing efficiency and effectiveness of learning.
Excellent stuff, Doc. We do have to step away and take a commercial break. We will be right back, everyone, with Dr. Ken Eastwood, Superintendent of Middletown Schools, here on Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. Welcome back to the program, everyone. This is Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving, with today's guest on the program. Super excited to have on Superintendent of Schools, Dr. Ken Eastwood. Doc, you're the first show with the new music here. What's your initial thoughts?
Well, I'm dancing in the aisles here.
Are we going to pump it through Middletown Schools in the hallway, maybe at dismissal? What do you think?
There you go.
Well, good. We wanted to get some energy. When I started out with the program, Doc, we had our guests select, musical selections that they liked, and that's fine on the radio. But when I was putting it out there on the social medias and such, we had some copyright issues, so we had to make a change. So,
I understand that. Yeah.
That was a minor crisis, and I wanted to get back into the show, Doc. You heard the opening segment talking about dealing with problems, dealing with crises. This was certainly a minor situation in my home. When you arrived in Middletown, Doc, in 2004, Middletown had a firestorm of problems with the superintendent or the former superintendent being removed for a sexual incident with a student. You mentioned about the extremely low graduation rate. When you got there, where did you start and how did you, again, dealing with crises, talking about that stuff, how did you get started with these rough situations you walked into?
Well, it was kind of interesting. I knew that there was the major problem with the superintendent. And after interviewing with the board members, I took the position that I kind of felt sorry for everybody, and not in a bad sense. Here you have one gentleman, or I wouldn't even call him a gentleman. You have one individual who did a horrific act. It became a public thing, and everybody then had a perception about the district based on one individual. And when I came up here to interview and I listened to a lot of the community and staff and the board, I didn't get that sense that it was fair. That it was fair to put down the whole organization because of one person. And that's kind of why I took the job. I wasn't necessarily afraid of the issue because I felt comfortable in the folks that were doing the instruction. What I was concerned about was how do you move the organization forward? But the only way that you can start doing that is by coming in and then studying what's going on and then trying to find some interventions to start pushing things forward. We started to do that, and what we quickly discovered, it wasn't just the issue associated with the superintendent and his inappropriate behaviors. We also noticed that the graduation rates were falsified, reported to state education in the 90s when they were in the low 50s.
Oof.
So it was almost like one board member put it. He said to us, not seriously, but not as in a laughing way, but his comment was, you need to stop turning rocks over. And what he really meant there was, by that was, really keep going, but when does it end kind of routine? And we were all asking that question. When is it that we know the reality of the district and the issues so we can start working on fixing them instead of just identifying them? And I would say that the first year was mostly the identification phase, and then once the year was over, we kind of felt that we had uncovered the reality of the district and identified the big issues and could start working forward. And that's, the community here, the Board of Education, over the years, has supported the changes that took place to create the movement away from where it was in 2004 to where we are today. And part of that was creating a belief system that where we were was not the place we wanted to be, and where we could go, we absolutely could work hard enough and gain the esteem of being at that level. And I think that's where we're at now. I really do believe that Middletown is at a fantastic place educationally, and it's held in esteem around this country for its academic programs, its use and leveraging of technology, and our sports facilities are held in high esteem to the point where we have a lot of statewide events here, playoffs and final games, state championships, et cetera. So I just think that we are at a place where we should be, where the community feels good about its kids coming here and about talking about the fact that they are from Middletown and feel good about that.
And that leads right to my next question, Doc, and you might have just answered it, but I wanted to say to you're getting ready to retire. I know you'll probably have some speeches, but here on air, on radio, there's a lot of communities and homes listening there. What is something that you would like to say to the community, that you're going to be departing here? What are some final words you would like to say to the people of Middletown?
Well, I think it's simply thank you. This community has been extremely supportive of this school district, and it stood behind the leadership, the Board of Education, and our staff when we were moving forward into new programs that a lot of people may have questioned, and they gave us the opportunity to test them out and to make sure that they were the types of programs that would create more effective and efficient and knowledgeable students, and we've done that. If the community had not done that, we probably would not be in the same place we're in right now. So it's quite simply, thank you to the community for trusting in the school district to take care of their kids. I really do believe that we've met that trust in providing educational environments that people are proud of and their kids are meeting with success in droves.
Well, and you got to feel proud of the work you've done. Looking back now and talking about some of the things that you and your team have accomplished. I hope you feel a sense of pride here upon your retirement to look at where you were 13 years ago, talking about our opening concept of begin with the end in mind. If you were told 13 years ago, hey, Dr. Eastwood, in 2018, when you retire, you're going to have a graduation rate on the doorstep of 90% and
Yep.
tremendous facilities and technology with kids learning at high levels and free meals and all of that stuff, you would have signed on for that, wouldn't you?
Yeah, and I hear that from a lot of people that in the community now, especially from former board members who say that when they were around in 2004, or even people that from the community that were around in 2004, they've sent me letters relative to they never thought that the district would get to this point because of how depressed they were with where they were at that period of time. And I still believe that the interview process for me showed that the community had that ability, and it was just getting out of the hole that it was in, and the potential that was here was pretty tremendous. I can't communicate enough because you just don't have a lot of time to do that, to communicate the fact that when I travel around this country, and I mean this country, Middletown, especially in the education corners, is very knowledgeable about what we've accomplished here. We are nationally recognized about our blended learning programs. We're nationally recognized about how we leverage technology here. We're now becoming very recognized nationally for closing the gap in ethnicities and poverty, which is very seldom if ever done in real terms. So the people outside this general area have a significant respect for what's happened here, and that is, as I said, because of our staff and our community. They've stood behind us. They've worked hard, and they've accomplished things that they knew could be accomplished, but it was taking the right environments.
Doc, let's shift gears a little bit. You're on the doorstep of retirement, and certainly congratulations to you and your family. What are you most looking forward to in your retirement?
My grandkids.
Okay, then tell us who they are. Hopefully they're tuning in here. Tell us who they are.
We have two girls. Our oldest has one that just turned 3 about 3 weeks ago, and she also has one that will become 1-year-old on Saturday, this coming Saturday. And interestingly enough, to a surprise to her as well, she's now expecting twins in March. So, she is going to have her hands full.
This is one of your daughters is going to have twins that has the 2 girls so far.
No, they're all boys so far.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So she's the one that likes surprises, so she doesn't know what she's going to have.
Oh, wow.
But she does know that they're not identical, so we're hoping that maybe one of them would be a girl.
Okay.
And then our youngest, she was married in May, and she's expecting her first child in February.
Oh, fantastic.
So we're going to have a good crop of kids, grandchildren, and they're going to keep us busy for a while, which is fine with me because I figure for the first 2 or 3 months in retirement, I'm just going to lay low and just think about what I would really like to do for the next decade or 2 or 3. So
okay.
And I'm hoping that some of the ideas that I have in my head will work themselves out.
And are your children in education, Doc?
No. My oldest daughter, she went to Rochester Institute of Technology. She got her bachelor's and then her master's in business, MBA. And she is a director of art for an very unique advertising company up in Rochester called the Birdie Group. And they have a tendency to work with startups, which there's a lot of in that area, and also companies that have very unique technologies that they're trying to bring into the marketplace. So
interesting.
She loves that job because she said every job is completely different.
Sure. And
there's always something exciting. Our second daughter, our youngest, she's a physical therapist. She was actually went to Clarkson and then down to New York Med at Westchester Hospital, and she worked at Mount Sinai for a couple of years and found that the city wasn't everything she thought, and she wanted to be up near her sister in Rochester, so she went up there to work at Strong Memorial and is now in a private practice. And she loves it up there. So as I said, she got married in last May and expecting her first child. So we're all excited about what the next month and a half is going to bring.
Absolutely. You're going to have a lot going on in the next month with your retirement and your move, and that's terrific, Doc. Doc, we are up on the rapid fire portion of the show, and we get a lot of feedback about this portion, and people like it. So we want the first answer that comes to your head. They are quick answers. And are you ready for rapid fire?
Yes, sir.
I know you've been under the gun before, board meetings or whatever. We're gonna give it to you straight, okay?
Yep.
Current book you are reading.
Life is a Sport. It's by Dr. Jonathan Fader. Dr. Fader actually was the mental strength coach for the Mets and is now the mental strength coach for the Giants. And we're actually working with him for a mandatory gym phys ed course, basically in the same area as Life is a Sport, to help our kids identify strategies for building their mental strength to withstand a lot of temptations that they may experience over the course of their lifetime, but also to develop the mental strength to stay and push harder and harder during their high school experience so they can graduate and possibly go to college or do the things that they really want to.
I love it.
That's what I'm reading. Life is a Sport.
Last movie you saw?
Wonder. About the young boy who had some facial problems and went to school and was bullied, but had the strength to pursue and develop friendships, and ended up becoming a well-respected member of his school district. It really, if you haven't seen that, it's a great story about what bullying could do to a kid, but at the same time, how to build the strength about helping students and your own children through a lot of difficult times.
February 1st, 2018, what are your plans?
Just relax for 2 to 3 months. I don't want to have to plan anything.
No meetings. Biggest pet peeve as superintendent?
Biggest pet peeve? Well, I guess it's the concept in America where we talk about all students having full access to things, and the reality is we don't either function or focus on that, prioritize that, or we clearly don't finance it. It's an issue about not walking the talk.
First thing you do, or you used to do, or we'll stop doing, but first thing you would do every day when you got to the office?
First thing I do, I come in and sign documents for the day, and then typically start moving through a whole series of meetings or projects.
Most important qualities of a leader?
Most important qualities of a leader. I would say honesty and belief in what you're doing, that it can actually happen. Because if you're just talking about it but you don't really believe it, it's something else. I'm going to take a really quick minute here to tell you a fast story about how much this concept of belief is. A friend of mine who actually is in the League of Innovative Schools with us, she was talking about interviewing graduates that were coming back from college, their first year of college, and they were a very high-needs district like ours. And this one girl was saying, well, what do you feel about what happened in high school? And she made a comment about it. She said, well, I knew the teachers respected me, but they didn't believe in me.
Mm.
And I really took that to heart. That was like almost a bullet going through my chest about that's it. I mean, the concept there really is we really have to believe in our kids, because they sense if we're just talking to them and not believing them.
That's powerful, Doc.
Yep.
Yeah. Things that something or things that you hope people will say about you after you leave.
That I was fair. I know that some people are not going to be happy with my decisions. Some are going to think they're the greatest thing since sliced bread. But when it's all said and done, I want them to feel that my true focus was always about what's best for kids and making sure that in the totality of things, we took care of kids. We made sure that they had opportunities to grow and be successful in life.
We have to take a break, everyone. Our guest today, Dr. Ken Eastwood. We will be right back here on Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving. Welcome back to the program, everyone. This is Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Surviving and Thriving, show number 32, a super fast recap because we are running out of time. We talked about dealing with crisis situations early in the program, offered a couple of tips. Number 1, staying calm. Number 2, stay positive. Number 3, analyze and prioritize. Number 4, begin with the end in mind. Number 5, make an action plan. Number 6, communicate with the kitchen cabinet, those closest to you, around you that you trust. And number 7, communicate, communicate, communicate. You could reach out to the program, Andrew at neversinkmediagroup.com and at Andrew Marotta 21 on Twitter. I'd like to welcome back in Dr. Eastwood, Superintendent of Schools, Middletown, New York. Doc, you did a great job on the program today, and certainly wish you the best in your retirement. We do have a question for you, Doc. It's a write-in portion of the program. Doc, you've probably interviewed hundreds, if not thousands, of people over your time as superintendent. You know, when you are interviewing people, Doc, what are some of the most important things? Let's say 3 of the most important things that you look for in the person and or on the resume.
Well, I think the one thing I go after is I want to know what their belief systems are. I also want them to talk about their accomplishments and their instructional knowledge. And the one thing I do is I just don't ask them questions about it. I ask them to give me examples. And the reason I do that is because a lot of people can talk the talk, as they say. They have all the vocabulary and the statements down. but when you ask them to give examples, they stutter and they can't really describe it. So you know a lot about the person if they fall into that category versus the ones that they give you significant examples and also very descriptive.
Well, in your retirement, you're going to be going from interviewing and building up a school district to building houses and building things with your grandchildren. So I wish you the best,
sir.
Doc. And again, to the Middletown community and surrounding areas, got to be extremely proud of the work that you guys have done. So kudos to you and your team, Doc.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
All right. Next week, coming up on Education, Leadership, and Beyond, Port Jervis High School science teacher, Patty McCarthy. That is all on Education, Leadership, and Beyond. Signing off. Go out and change the world for the better.